Welcome to Shriji Softanfo Consultancy LLP, a Microsoft partner. Introducing no-code workbook reports. Search for workbook reports using the global search and open the workbook reports page. Click New to create a new workbook report. On the workbook report card, enter a unique report code. This code will be printed in the generated workbook, making it easy to identify the report. You can also enter a report caption, which will appear as the title of the workbook. For this example, I've entered 100 in the max rows field and 20 in the max columns field. You can hover over the max rows and max columns fields to view additional information and supported limits. The max rows value can be set between 1 and 50,000, while max columns can be set between 1 and 16,384. These settings define the maximum size of the workbook that can be generated. Once these values are configured, your workbook report is ready for the next stage of setup. Now, go to the main section to define the dataset in the Report Datasets area. Click New to add a dataset, then select the required table number. For this example, I've selected the vendor table as the parent dataset. Next, set the table hierarchy to parent. Every workbook report can have only one parent dataset, which acts as the main data source for the report. Next, let's add a child dataset. Click New in the Report Datasets section and select the vendor ledger entry table as the table number. Then, set the table hierarchy to child. After selecting child, choose the parent table number. In this example, select the vendor table that we created earlier. Next, enter the parent field ID, which identifies the field in the parent table that will be used to establish the relationship. Then, enter the child field ID, which specifies the corresponding field in the child table. Together, these fields define the relationship between the parent and child datasets. Finally, set the relationship type to one-to-many, because a single vendor can have multiple vendor ledger entries. Once this relationship is configured, the workbook report will automatically retrieve all related vendor ledger entries for each vendor in the parent dataset. Now, go to the Report Table Filters section to define the filters for your dataset. Click New and select the table number. For this example, select the vendor table. Then, choose the field number. In this example, I've selected the block field. Next, choose the appropriate filter type. Multiple filter types are available depending on the type of field you're filtering. If the field contains values from a related table or an enum, select Lookup. Then, click the Lookup Filter Value field and choose the required value from the available list. For other filter types, you can simply enter the required value directly in the Filter Value field. In this example, I've selected the Lookup filter type and chosen a blank value for the block field. This ensures that only vendors that are not blocked are included in the report. Let's add another filter. This time, I've selected the remaining amount, LCY, field and set the filter operator to greater than with a value of 0. This filters the data to include only vendors that have an outstanding balance. You can add multiple filters to the same table as needed. All of the configured filters are applied together when the workbook report is generated, allowing you to retrieve only the data that matches your business requirements and reducing unnecessary records in the final Excel workbook. This completes the report setup. Now, let's define the columns that will appear in the generated workbook. Go to the Report Column List section and click New. Select the table number from one of the datasets you've already configured, and then choose the required field ID. If needed, you can also provide a custom caption to display a user-friendly column heading in the workbook. For the first column, I've selected the vendor table and chosen the number field. I've entered a custom caption of vendor number. For the second column, I've again selected the vendor table and chosen the name field. This time, I've entered the custom caption vendor name. Next, I've added another column from the vendor table and selected the payment terms code field. I've left the custom caption blank, so the workbook will automatically use the default field caption. I've also added one more column from the vendor table and left the custom caption blank. When no custom caption is provided, the workbook automatically uses the default field caption. Finally, I've added a column from the vendor ledger entry table and selected the remaining amount, LCY, field. I've left the custom caption blank for this column as well. The calculation formula field provides multiple options, such as sum, average, lookup, count, minimum, and maximum, allowing you to summarize or retrieve data based on your reporting requirements. For this example, I've selected sum. Since remaining amount, LCY, belongs to the child dataset, the report calculates the total remaining amount, LCY, across all related vendor ledger entries for each vendor. For fields in the parent dataset, simply leave the calculation formula blank, as no aggregation is required. We're now done with the report setup and ready to generate the workbook. Go to the Actions menu and click the Generate Workbook Report action. The report will be generated and downloaded within a few seconds, depending on the amount of data and the number of rows being processed. Once the download is complete, open the workbook to verify the generated data. You can review the columns, calculated values, and filtered records to ensure the report meets your requirements. Thank you for watching this video.